Mm. Mm. Oh, hi. This is Fritz with Against Psychiatry and AgainstPsychiatry.com. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is the 5th installment of the video of me reading the 2 articles from our 2-article Zine-Lit. I just finished reading Better Than Well in the 4th installment. This is the 5th installment, and I'm about to start reading Don't Listen to Him, He's Crazy. So if you're just tuning in now, it's a good time, but if you can't find all the different video segments that you want, go to the website, and that way you can read the articles in text, you can check out the footnotes, you can email me with any questions, etc. Excuse me. That's www.againstpsychiatry.com. Anyway, the article. Don't listen to him, he's crazy. I wrote this back in 2006, and it was actually accepted for publication in Nobody Passes, Rejecting the Rules of Gender Conformity, a 2006 radical queer anthology edited by Matilda, a.k.a. Matt Bernstein Sycamore. Unfortunately, in a cowardly act of PC censorship, the publisher, Seal Press, suddenly pulled it from the manuscript along with another article just days before it went to the presses. So, if you're interested in this article, you either have to get it in zine format, and this is what it looks like. At one of the limited locations that carry my self-published work, mostly in San Francisco or New York, or you can go to the website and you can email me and I can send you a copy. Or you can just read the text on the website, or if you manage to track down all the video segments, you can just watch the whole thing here on YouTube. Unfortunately, though, YouTube video segments can only be 10 minutes long, so I've had to break it up into a lot of pieces. So hopefully it won't be too difficult for people to locate. This is my first time making a YouTube video, so I'm totally lost. But here's the article. It starts with a little anecdote. A few years ago, I attended the True Spirit Conference, a fun, social, cruisy event held troublingly at a big fancy hotel, though not without scholarships, for folks on the female to male transgender spectrum. Many of the young trans men and genderqueers at the conference identified as radical, quite a few as punks, and a number of them worked in the field of social services. Quite a few, I could also mention, were really hot. I allowed myself to be distracted from the vital task of sex and socializing, and participated in a workshop by Dylan Shalinsky, author of The Last Time I Wore a Dress. After talking to us about his traumatic experiences as a young person forcibly institutionalized in an attempt to cure him of his gender identity disorder, Dylan was criticized by several audience members for his unfavorable depiction of the psychiatric industry. One self-identified psychiatrist hijacked the question and answer period to loudly and authoritatively affirm the acceptable assimilationist philosophy for dealing with this sticky issue. Well, yes, it was bad for you to have been put in that mental institution. You did not belong in there, because you are not really mentally ill. You are just transgender. But mental institutions are good and necessary because 99% of the people in there are actually mentally ill, and that is where they belong. The psychiatrist was reaffirming his right to abuse those he did not consider capable of passing as normal, winning support from the trannies by simultaneously releasing them from this category. I was the only person who expressed the opinion that no one, no matter how crazy seeming, belongs in a mental institution. People insisted that I simply didn't understand how sick and dangerous and helpless these mental patients really were. I responded, how could I possibly understand when I used to be one? Here I was, yet another trans person who had been institutionalized and abused as a child, but, unlike Dylan, the abuse inflicted upon me had not occurred specifically because I was trans. I had been labeled with what the people in this workshop considered to be legitimate mental illnesses. Did this mean that what was done to me as a child was okay? Did this mean that these people, several of whom identified as radical, thought it was okay to institutionalize children as long as they were also labeled as something genuinely crazy in addition? I chose to out myself about everything if it affords me an opportunity to educate. But it makes sense to me why so many other psychiatric abuse survivors remain closeted about their experiences. Our society does its best to maintain the status quo, often attempting to silence abuse survivors both by questioning the veracity of our stories and by hinting at our supposed culpability in the violence that has been inflicted against us. The same logic that claims you got raped because you were a slut tells us you got drugged because you were crazy. The strategies are the same whether we are talking about psychiatric abuse, sexual abuse, or the ever-popular combination of the two. It is stressful and triggering to talk about this stuff when you know that you are liable to be attacked. I couldn't do it for years without freaking out, and only recently have I been able to write about it. Countless people have been similarly victimized, and many have suffered such severe brain damage as a result of the treatments that were inflicted against them that their ability to speak out has been permanently compromised. Unfortunately, this leaves us with a situation where the story of the psychiatric experience is told solely by compliant model patients, handpicked as representatives for faithfully taking their pills and parroting back psychiatric industry propaganda. Once inside the psychiatric system, few manage to fully escape. Many see their lives destroyed. It is up to those of us who have managed to get out relatively intact to speak out. The psychiatrist at the workshop tried to shut me up by telling me that I didn't seem that bad, effectively letting me know that I could pass for sane. As a counterpoint, he gave the example of a female patient so disturbed that she had bitten his hand. The truth of the matter is that if he had encountered me a few years earlier when I was drugged and disempowered, he would have easily bestowed the same diagnosis on me. Anyone subjected to such dehumanizing conditions will become dehumanized. The handbiter could have just as well been me, or the psychiatrist, or anyone else at the workshop. I believe that we all have a right to express strong emotions without the fear of losing our liberty. Isn't this obvious? Perhaps it is not fair to expect all queers and trannies and punks to be radical or anti-authoritarian, but for those folks who do identify as radical, shouldn't the authoritarian practices of the psychiatric industry be condemned? A little over a year ago, a friend of mine attended a so-called open discussion on mental health at an anarchist community center, presented by a group called the Icarus Project. What she found was a pro-drug, pro-psychiatry propaganda session. When she tentatively voiced her difference of opinion, they silenced her by announcing that she was obviously in need of drugs. As she recounted this experience to me, I was aghast. She told me that she'd left the anarchist space that day feeling deeply shaken and confused. Now aware of the need to openly express a dissenting opinion, I began work on a zine called Against Psychiatry: Why You Should Oppose the War Against the Mind. Although I had originally intended my zine to address the anarchist activist punk scene, I have distributed far more copies to queer and trans homeless youth, a huge percentage of whom are fellow survivors of sexual and psychiatric abuse. This population is often unwillingly caught up in the psychiatric system through reliance on social programs for survival at a time when urban gentrification has decimated historically underground economies, such as street-level sex work, and placed basic needs, such as housing, out of the reach of all but a privileged few. As a privileged kid running from psychiatric abuse, I have passed through many different worlds. Initially drawn to participate in communities with a stated anti-authoritarian political analysis, I desired an opportunity to unite with other creative folks affected by what are commonly labeled mental health issues to discuss the problems we experienced and work together toward mutual aid and collective solutions. When I first heard of the Icarus Project, I thought it might be something like I was looking for. Unfortunately, however, despite doubtlessly good intentions, what the Icarus Project presents is something quite different. Okay, now, YouTube videos can only be 10 minutes long, so that's the end of section 5. And if you want to hear the rest of this article, you're going to have to find section 6. And if you can't, like I said, check out the website. Alright, thanks again.